Welcome back to episode 3, everybody, of Catching Carbon. We're so pumped for y'all to be here. I'm Luke Lana. I've got Jeff Holyoke back in the lab with me, and today we're going to be diving into the congressional bill that harbors 45Q. You've probably heard that word. Maybe you don't fully understand it. Maybe you haven't heard it, but you're going to learn about it today. Jeff, what are we going to be covering?
Yeah, absolutely. We noted that earlier in previous episodes. If you haven't heard about 45Q, you very soon will. And so we figured we'd take a little time here, take 10 minutes, and kind of explain it to you. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to give you a brief background. What is 45Q? How does it act? What are tax credits? What does it apply to? And as importantly, the new Inflation Reduction Act, it actually extends 45Q as well as a lot of whole things with green energy and hydrogen and all sorts of good things like that. So we'll kind of quickly cover that, but then we're going to transition to the most important part, and that is, what does it mean to you? Why are we talking about it? So we'll set the stage really quick that we are not 45Q experts. We haven't read the new bill. At the moment of taping of this episode right now, President Biden is hopefully or supposedly signing this into law, the Inflation Reduction Act, which includes the new updates to 45Q. But we are not experts in it at all. We know how it's going to pertain to you and what it's going to do to the market. That's what we're here to talk about. So, yeah. Luke, tell us about 45Q. What is it? Why do we care?
Absolutely, and it's important to note that there are pros and cons for your business model. So the pros being leveraging 45Q to your advantage, taking advantage of the tax credit and kind of helping that build out your model. But at the same time, we believe that fundamentally the supply of CO2 is going to change as a result of 45Q.
Absolutely.
Business models today, as they operate, are going to shift. And you can kind of highlight what we plan on seeing, but it's just the transition from supplying to the free market to taking advantage of the sequestration.
Yep, absolutely. Not today, not tomorrow, not even next year, but in the coming 5 to 10 years, I think 45Q will dictate a whole lot more of our CO2 supply being sequestered into the ground, and from that, we're going to have to find alternative sources. So I think we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. We're talking a little bit more about what 45Q is going to do. What is 45Q?
Yeah,
what is sequestration?
Absolutely. And so, as many people know it, sequestration is taking CO2, we're recapturing it through different purposes, and instead of off-gassing that to the atmosphere, we're going to put it underground, identify geological structures that will trap it forever. That's sequestration. It's not coming back out. And so the government is incentivizing users to capture and sequester. That's where we hear about the tax credit. There's also tax credit for alternative use. And that's where, when we have conversations, people are most intrigued. You're telling me I don't have to necessarily put this into a pipeline and run it hundreds of miles underground. I can rather utilize this for all of the applications that use CO2 today. And that's exactly right. So kind of looking at 45Q and where it started back in 2017, it was around $12.50 per ton of CO2 captured and repurposed into an alternative market. Alternative market being something that already uses CO2. And with that $12.50 of alternative use, it was around $25, $30 for a sequestered ton of CO2. And we've seen that trend upward with inflation. The government had highlighted on that. And now with the Inflation Reduction Act, we are going to see prices come up even higher. And Jeff will touch on that in a minute. But some of the other highlights, historically, you did need to be capturing 25,000 tons per year to be able to apply for the credit. And in speaking with our legal counsel, it sounded like there was certainly some opportunity to aggregate sources. We're talking to some of our partners. Can we capture at this location and that location and achieve those goals? But with the Inflation Reduction Act, it sounds like things are going to become a lot more favorable, and so we're certainly excited about that. Why don't you break the bill down for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, under the new Inflation Reduction Act, and we won't make fun of the name of that bill. It's an energy bill, and it is what it is. It's a good bill. It covers a lot of ground. But I don't know about inflation reduction. Anyway, somebody had to say it. I said it.
He digresses.
Sorry.
Yeah, we knew he would be the one to say it.
I said I wasn't going to say it before we started this.
That's unscripted, off the cuff.
That's we have a script?
Jeff being Jeff.
We have a script?
The script lives up here.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so at the end of the day, if you capture and sequester CO2 off of any industrial source, whether that's ethanol production, ammonia production, power generation, anything, and you capture it, and it goes into one of these pipelines that's going into a geological structure. At the end of the day, with 45Q, that rate is going up from $50 per ton to $85 per ton. Currently in tax credit, but as we understand it, it's not even just you can actually get a positive net impact on your P&L from that tax credit. So it's like a direct payment, but it's not. Again, we're not experts in it. We have references for legal and accounting groups that can help you on that. If you need, please reach out. We'll forward those on to you. But as Luke noted, today it's for commercial use. If you capture your CO2, but then you go send it into commercial use, whether that's food freezing, water treatment, grow houses, fire suppression, anything you are using CO2 for today, now that number goes from $35 a ton up to $60 per ton. So there's a scale. It increases every year based on inflation and either PPI or CPI rates. But it's not. It doesn't start this year, but it starts going for the future. And on top of that, probably the biggest benefit for investment is in the new act. It was any construction project that started before January 1st, 2026 would apply for this. Now that's been extended up to 2033. So we've got a good, probably about 2 decades worth of tax credits available because it goes for 12 years after your construction project goes on. So, that really is going to help encourage investment. So at the end of the day, it's an investment and an incentive to capture CO2. So why does that matter? And that's really what we're here to talk about. So we wanted to give you guys a background of what it is, but that's all you need to know at the moment. If it applies to you and you want to be able to capture your own CO2, we'll help you and work with you on that. But the more important thing is, as Luke alluded to a minute ago, I think it's going to be a dramatic impact to the CO2 distribution market as we know it today.
Certainly. And, I think there's two ways we can look at this: impact to supply of CO2 and also new and emerging technology and opportunities. So I'll jump on that first and let you talk about supply. But with this new act passing, we're actually taking the credit all the way to $185 a ton for direct air capture. And so if you tuned into our previous episodes, shameless plug right there to go back and listen if you have not, but we talked about how energy intensive it is to take the CO2 that's in the atmosphere and go ahead and turn that into a usable beverage grade CO2 at value. It's expensive, it's capital intensive, and this bill is encouraging these new technologies. Past that, what will the opportunity be in the mid-market? All the big users certainly can take advantage of this, but what happens to CO2 supply in the middle market? So I think we're going to see a lot of new technologies emerge, opportunities in sequestration. There's geological. I wanted
not geometrical.
Not so many geos, but geological sequestration and also biological sequestration. And so people looking for new opportunities to sequester and take advantage of the credit. So a lot of opportunity to step into a space. It's kind of the final frontier, Wild West. Somebody can really come and establish themselves as a big player.
Yeah, the numbers that we've always kind of worked off of is for direct air capture, it's estimated to cost about $300 to $500 per ton. Mm-hmm. So that $185 tax credit, the idea being, if I'm already investing in these direct air captures, it's just not a good payback and there's not a good model. So it hasn't gotten to scale globally, really. Right. But the idea of that is really, how do we encourage it? How do we help supplement it to encourage investment?
And ultimately, you have new innovators, costs drive down, and this model then does become economical, and that's what we all want to see happen. So that's really exciting on the front of opportunity and new technology.
So let's talk about the $85 per ton. So I'll just pull ethanol. The ethanol, power generation, ammonia, those are the large producers of CO2 in the country for the most part. So if you produce ethanol, and you can get $85 per ton to capture and sequester it. And right now you only capture 10, 15, 20% of your CO2 and sell it in the commercial markets or sell it off and wholesale it so somebody else can retail it in commercial markets. Why? And that's the question. And I'm not speaking for any ethanol production facilities or anything like that. that's my open-ended question to myself and to the world. Why would you do that if the market price for CO2 is, for wholesale is $100, $120 a ton? And you can get $85 a ton and don't have to do anything, capture all of it 10 times more than you do today and get paid for it or tax credits for it. I feel like you're going to. I would. So if you start doing that and all of our major sources of CO2 are now being captured and sequestered, well, we went through again previous episodes where our CO2 comes from. If those were all disappear or greatly be reduced, our demand for CO2 hasn't changed. We need alternative sources. Yep. And we think that's where this is going to help come in and drive a lot of these things. But this current distribution model, the current sources of CO2 that we have within our retail and commercial use, I think are going to go away. Again, 5, 7, 10 years from now, not overnight. Yeah. But they exist. The technology exists. The alternative sources exist. The ability to certify and utilize that gas is critical. Yeah. And I think that's where we're going.
No, I agree. And so playing through this hypothetical right now, we have a supply problem. Your big players are taking advantage of the tax credit, and we have a void to fill. We know there's low-hanging fruit, right? In right now, currently in landfill, you're producing methane. Methane goes into the pipeline. But a byproduct of this pure methane is 99% CO2 that right now is being off-gassed. Absolutely. And it does not take a lot to go from 98 to a certified beverage-grade usable CO2 in the mid-level market. So, and that's just one example, biogas. There are certainly others. We want to touch on hydrogen. That's another great opportunity.
Yeah, really. Let's stay on the methane side really quick. Think about natural gas prices are extremely high right now, and they're not going down globally. And really for the U.S., we're just exporting more and more of our natural gas. Well, what is natural gas? There's methane. So capturing this methane, and methane is, I can't remember the number, I'm going to make it up, 10 times, 100 times worse than CO2 to the environment. Sure. So capturing the methane off of landfill is great. But now we're capturing the methane, we're producing CO2 in the process, but we're lowering the cost ultimately of natural gas, but we're producing this CO2. Well, how do you overall reduce your operating costs? Capture that CO2 and let's use that CO2. Absolutely. So landfills and things like that are great opportunities for alternative sources of CO2 in the future. Hydrogen also. We'll talk a lot about hydrogen. We're huge advocates of the hydrogen economy, and we believe it's coming. It's been building for decades, and it's a slow process, but we believe it's coming. And so, but in order to get to hydrogen, it's a lot of energy. It's very energy intensive to produce hydrogen right now. There are alternatives, but it's just like an electric car. Electric cars are green when you're driving it because it's running off of a battery. Right. Yeah. But you plug that battery into your power generator, you plug it home, and that power is generated sometimes by wind and solar, sometimes by nuclear, usually by coal and other sources. So it's not green until the source of power is clean, and that's where when you produce hydrogen, especially at large scale and even at small scale, you produce a tremendous amount of CO2 as well. Small scale hydrogen production, small scale CO2 production, capture and commercial use. I think that's a future as well.
Yeah, and so as we continue to evolve, and we believe in the hydrogen infrastructure, and we believe in the adoption of new sources, they're plentiful, they're all around us, and there's just a ton of upside to go out and capture these sources. And so, we're certainly excited about that. But you can look at this in a few different ways. Either there's upside, I'm going to leverage the credit, or what am I going to do with my supply? We're going to get creative is what we're going to do. And so absolutely, we believe that this will be a win-win for everybody. We're going to really focus on the reduction of emissions, but we're going to provide sources for CO2. We're going to enable business to continue at pace, and ideally all benefit from the credits that are now being offered.
Absolutely. Well, I think we kind of covered everything. It's not the most exciting concept in the world, but it's a critical one. And then again, it's the baseline for everything that we see happening in the CO2 markets for the coming decade. Yeah. So
couldn't agree more.
Sign us off. You're way better at it.
We'll sign off there. Please, if you have questions, reach out. We can get you in touch with our contacts. We're happy to jump on the line. But we are branching into uncharted territory, and we're super excited to blaze the trail. Thank you all. We'll see you for episode 4. Real quick before you go, we've got some exciting news to share. Jeff Holyoke will be featured as a speaker at the Gas World CO2 Summit in September the 21st and 22nd, and that will be in Chicago. Jeff is going to be speaking on the 22nd, the afternoon, and even more exciting, we're going to be going live for the first time in front of an audience at the summit. So if you're interested, jump to the Gas World CO2 Summit online, get your tickets, and come out and support and see us. There will be a lot of great minds. Look forward to it.